Hello, I want to thank you, Niru Dhawan, for joining us today. I know you're an alum, and I know that you wear multiple hats on campus, and we are super honored to have you share your experience with us as someone who's celebrating Women's History Month through our series. So, without further ado, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. So my name is Niru. I am a very proud Suffolk MBA alum, graduated in 21, so really grateful to just be a part of the Suffolk community. I'm wearing multiple hats, that's true. I love Suffolk so much that I serve on our MBA board and also our SBS alumni board for the first time, so very excited for that. And now working at an education consulting nonprofit called ERS, which is Education Resource Strategies, in their finance and accounting team.
Oh, you just alluded to my second question about your role in ERS, so Education Resource Strategies. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do there and how you would describe your role?
So I'm wearing a lot of hats on our finance team. My formal title is staff accountant. And a lot of things that I do is accounts payable to making sure our invoicing gets processed. We're working with our vendors to make sure they get paid. Um, Doing also a lot of work on timesheets, so bring the voice for the org on, get your timesheets in so you make sure, we know where everyone's spending their time as it relates to consulting projects and internal work. Um, Also doing a lot of work with expense report management, especially as our consultants travel, being the support for them. And then a couple of other projects that's been going on is onboarding a new accounting system. So working with the team on that and setting up the team and the org for success there. And I led a project to find a new travel agent, especially because of a lot of consulting travel work that our consultants do to go to districts for the education piece. Um, and then we just hired a new temp candidate to help us wrap our arms around everything. So I'm taking kind of a bit of a supervisory hat there. So a lot of amazing work that we've been doing with the team. I actually marked my 2-year anniversary with the team last week. So really,
Congratulations.
thank you. I'm just really grateful to work with the great team.
That's really good to hear. And I know that, having a master's degree from Suffolk has also influenced some of those responsibilities that you have taken on at the organization. I wanted to pivot now and talk about your role on the boards here at Suffolk. So for someone who has no idea, what does it mean to be a board member and what do you do?
That's an amazing question. I feel like because, it's my first time serving on any board, I feel I'm coming at it with like learning and leadership. So understanding that I'm taking that leadership role on these boards, but also admitting that I still have a lot to learn. I don't know all the answers, and especially because I didn't, get that undergrad experience at Suffolk, knowing how are we taking care of our students, how are we setting them up for success. And it's just giving me so much exposure there. So a couple of board meetings ago, we had Professor Seidel talk about his work, his course on wicked problems and tackling problems on the T and things going on there. We got to see the X Lab, which is part of our marketing department. I was actually a test subject, and it was so cool because I got to they were pretty much tracking my eye movements when I was engaging with a website and what emotions were elicited there. It was so amazing. And working on the MBA board, I'm on the subcommittee for events and networking. So figuring out how do we bridge that gap of engagement between our current MBA students and our alumni, and how can our alumni provide that support for our students? Because for me, that's been huge with my success at Suffolk and graduating. So it's a lot about, again, with the learning, leading, and also how do we build on that networking and mentorship piece?
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're back and serving in this capacity. As we celebrate Women's History Month, what relevance does this acknowledgement hold for you?
I think something that resonates a lot with me is in the past month as empowerment. So especially with the past few months of like either having a lot of projects and things happening personally, professionally, all the things, I feel like I've had to remind myself that, yeah, you can do this. I mean, it's a lot of things at once, but I have the resources that I have to get the work done, but also feeling empowered to say, okay, maybe I can't handle this right now, or maybe I need to take a step back. Maybe I need some help. That was one of the things that I was working on with my team. And one of the feedback that I got was, yeah, you can ask for help and it's okay. And so that level of empowerment kind of works both ways for me. And that's been a lot on my mind in the past month.
So, has gender impacted your career goals, your career outcomes? If so, how?
Absolutely. So in terms of kind of my background, I was set up to be in banking. And at one point I thought my dream job is to be a financial analyst in banking, right? And so I set myself up for that, great. But then when I walked through the door and I had that in my hands, I realized that's not what I want. And being a woman in finance, let alone a woman of color in finance, is very hard. And it was very overwhelming. And it made me feel that maybe this isn't the right environment for me. And so I then had to pivot myself to, well, start from scratch essentially to realize what do I do want. And then kind of making that pivot away from finance into accounting so that I can still make use of those analytical skills, analysis skills that I've had, but work for an education nonprofit because of my passion for education and being a nonprofit, which is as far away as you can get from corporate. So definitely been a huge influence in where I now am.
That's wonderful because sometimes we think there's only one way of being and using um, our expertise, but there's so many ways of doing that. So I'm glad that worked for you. So in terms of folks who have empowered you or inspired you or even mentored you, can you share some female leaders who you consider mentors and who you look up to in your work, in your personal life, or in general?
Yeah, I about two or three people come to mind, and all of them are Suffolk. So Jodi Detchen, I love her. She is one of the reasons why I decided to come to Suffolk back in the day when you used to do graduation recruitment events. And when I came out of that event, I knew I'm going to Suffolk because I knew that there was this experiential learning experience. There was opportunities for me to grow, take on leadership roles, and it's also just a great way for me to pay it forward to her because now I'm serving on her board. So she has just been amazing, and also glad that I can be a part of this series that where you also interviewed her. So that it's just so amazing. So I love Jodi. And two other names that come to mind is Linda Jones, who was my ramp mentor, is currently my mentor, used to be the president of the board, and now she's doing amazing things. And she is the reason why I've been able to thrive so well in everything that I do because of her mentorship. And Jenny Joseph Hale, who is now my mentor for the board, and I've been in touch with her since day one also. And it's great and funny that I think about that because a few weeks ago I attended the Black Excellence Gala and I have this photo of the three of us, and I think it just encapsulates like that I am because of them, because of their mentorship. So I'm really grateful that I've had those Suffolk women leaders to help me get to where I am now.
Oh, that's beautiful to hear. Okay, so if you were a consultant and you could offer solutions, what's one thing, or maybe a couple, you would share that we could do as a society that moves us towards gender diversity, gender parity in the workplace?
Yeah, I think something that Jody articulated really well in her interview was like childcare, right? This notion that it's still perceived as like the woman has to do all of it and take on that responsibility, and it should be shared. And so figuring that out, I think, is super important. Also kind of in tied with just our overall mindset and perspective is seeking understanding with care and curiosity. Because when we're doing, this research and analysis, and she talked about this as well, it's, we lead with curiosity and we're doing all this data analysis, but we have to remember that there are people behind this data, right? So with ERS, we do that. We lead with curiosity. We're doing this data, but we also have to remember we're dealing with kids here, right? The kids, and how do they thrive in setting themselves up for good education. And so I think that is also, I feel the same way with this topic, is when we're doing this research, we're talking about women here, like we're talking about people, and how do we think about that when we're doing all of that analysis and research there?
What advice would you give to your younger self?
Um, a bunch of things, but I think the main thing is, I'll give one kind of advice, and I'll give kind of inspiring notes of wisdom, I guess. I don't know.
Okay, do it. It's for yourself.
Yeah, right. I think there's just as much value in knowing what you don't want in addition to knowing what you do want. And I think that's been very important to understand, because when I was in the banking world and I thought that's what I wanted, and then I went in there and I said, no, this is not what I want. And at first you might think, well, okay, great. Well, I just wasted all that time. I just wasted all those years, but it's not a waste. It's understanding, okay, I tried something and now I know that that's not what I want. What are other things that I could want? And I feel like and that's why we say, right, do an internship, do all these opportunities, get your foot in the door, because you never know if you're in the right room or not unless you go through that door. So I think that would be the biggest thing that I would tell to my younger self.
And you said there was another general one or more inspirational one?
Yeah, so I guess nuggets of wisdom. So there's this podcast called Calm It Down, which I love. It's so inspirational, highly recommend. And it's by pianist Chad Lawson, and he has his piano music in the background, very soothing. And he has these kind of 10 seeds of wisdom that he shared. And two of those that resonate with me are, you are not alone and you are enough. And I think having that as a reminder, putting that on a sticky note somewhere, I think it's a reminder that, yeah, you're going through hardships and you're going through challenges, but you're not alone and you have support where you need it, where you can find it.
Absolutely. I read someone's post that said, your work is not your worth, right? And I
Yeah.
think sometimes going back to what you were sharing earlier of like, having to pivot, I think sometimes people think of, if you change from one thing to the other, it's like, oh my gosh, you're not a banker anymore. And it's like, no, I'm not. But I'm doing something else. I'm changing the world in a
Yeah.
different way, right? I'm using my skills, my intelligence, my capacity in a way that makes a difference and that matters to me. So I love the fact that you were able to say, you know what, I thought this was what I wanted, but I changed my mind. And I always say that the only constant in life is change.
Yeah.
So I just loved hearing how you did that pivot and how you found something that makes so much impact to you. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I think what I will say is that whether you're going through, personal ambitions or in your career, I would say this is all a journey, right? All these things are stepping stones to help you find better opportunities to figure out what do you want and who you are. I I was I joked to one of my colleagues brought this idea on of being in your selfish era, which I had kind of that last year, and just figuring out what do I want, either career or personal. And even now I have a good idea of what I want, but it's still an ongoing journey. So I think take heart that it's not the end of the road. There's always new things coming.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Niru. We appreciate you as an alum, as a board member, and someone who's also in the education space. So thank you for your time and thank you for sharing your story as part of our Women's History Month series.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, my pleasure.